All right, so a few weeks ago, I was in California, if you remember, and I was at the Thrive event. Had a great time broadcasting from there and meeting a bunch of people. And one of the people I met, his name was Pat Roy. And Pat, one, just an awesome guy. Two, awesome family. And three, he has a position with an organization that I thought would be of interest to a lot of you. So I figured, hey, you know what? We need to have Pat on. So Pat, how are you doing, sir?
Josh, I'm doing great. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being back. You're what do they call it? An old bone in radio? I mean, you've been on radio before. You know how this works. Pat, tell us a little bit about your story leading up to where you are now.
Well, I've been in the creation movement for about 25 years. I started at the Institute for Creation Research, and then my wife and I, while there, began producing a radio drama called Jonathan Park. And then this last year, I went to work for a new creation organization called Genesis Apologetics.
Nice. So what is Genesis Apologetics?
Well, listen, our real heart is to reach the public school students and give them an apologetic for their faith. We really want to help them to debunk evolution. So that's really what we're about.
Nice.
Josh, you've probably heard the statistic that more than half of Christian students will reject their faith by the time they're done with college. And that's just an amazingly sad statistic. And so, listen, our goal is to try and equip those students with the evidence so that they realize that God's Word is actually true, right? It's not just a collection of stories they hear in Sunday school, but when God asks us to believe what He asks us to believe, we know that it's true and not just a collection of stories.
You know what's interesting about that? We had a guy on, not even talking about this topic, but we had a guy on yesterday, and I was bringing up that stat about how many people leave their faith when they're in college. And he said that as sad as that is, there is a kind of like a silver lining. Later in life, once they realize the Dawkins and the Michio Kakus and the Neil deGrasse Tysons are all blowing smoke up their skirt, they have a tendency to come back. So that's always kind of nice. But tell us, I mean, how do you go about this? What are you hitting? Are you trying to say, hey, look, your teachers are all 20 years behind the research and they're still teaching you a biased position and they're not really skeptical, they're just pretending to be skeptics? Or do you bring in new information?
Well, yeah, here's how we started out. By the way, Dr. Dan Biddle is the president of Genesis Apologetics, and this has been his vision. It's been kind of neat. And one of his goals from the very beginning was to take all of the textbooks that we're using here in California and go through and identify what's being taught to the students. So he basically went through all of those textbooks, and we identified the evolutionary teaching. And then we realized that basically that teaching fell into 12 main topics. And so we took those 12 and we went through and debunked those. So we talked about things like mutations and natural selection and uniformitarian thinking and all of that type of stuff, and basically went through and just debunked those. And then we put those into a book, and then we made that into a student guide. But then we realized, well, students probably aren't going to read this really thick book, so let's make some videos out of it. So we just recently, Josh, released a brand new video series called Debunking Evolution. And there are 8 to 12-minute episodes, and they take on each one of these 12. So it's been kind of an exciting project. We've just released the videos, and now we're going to start getting out and actually getting those videos into the hands as many students as we can.
Now, I'm assuming that there's going to be a little bit of pushback. I mean, if you're focusing on students, especially in public schools, I'm assuming that there's going to be some people that say, hey, what are you doing? You're trying to push God. So how do you handle that?
Well, I guess, Josh, it's kind of funny that you say that because we just produced a new commercial that we launched on the internet just a couple days ago, and it's kind of fun. The premise of the video, I'm calling it the creationist dream, right? It's a kid in the public school, and the professor is pushing evolution on them, and then finally one girl stands up, and she doesn't actually stand up, but she stands up for her faith, and she starts asking all of these questions, and then after she's done asking all the questions, you see the rest of the students raising their hand, right? So it's this great commercial that we put together, and we just launched that. And boy, Josh, I tell you, I spent probably about 24 hours just answering all these evolutionists that were just jumping all over us about, hey, evolution's not a faith, it's science. You can't say that. And so you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of pushback, and we're starting to feel some of that already.
You know, it's interesting about that. I've had a few atheist scientists on the show, and all of them have kind of admitted that. Well, not even kind of. I remember one that was less than a month ago. He said that he doesn't understand. Now, he's not even a believer in anything, but he doesn't understand the vitriol that non-scientists, atheists have. There's like this, you know, well, I don't want to believe, so I'm going to pick this theory, and I'm going to believe in it wholeheartedly, and anything other than this is just you being religious mumbo-jumbo. And he was pointing out how real scientists would never do that, and how even real scientists, peer-reviewed, you know, atheist scientists, most of them are saying you never look for proof of anything. What you look is theories that lead to conclusions. And this whole idea of, well, there's no proof of God, just shows that most of these atheists who say that aren't really understanding what science actually is.
Right, yeah, that's very interesting, right? And when it comes down to it, evolution itself is a religion, and I was just having a conversation with a few different evolutionists, and I was pointing that out, is that, you know, if you look at the Merriam-Webster definition of religion, it's a belief about origins, right, where we all came from and the purpose and the meaning of the universe, which really fits the definition of evolution, right? And the thing that I kept pointing out to them was, hey, listen, there are huge gaps in what you believe with no evidence. In other words, they believe that non-living material became alive. They believe that gas clouds, instead of dissipating, collapsed down and became stars. I mean, there's a lot of things that they believe in faith, right? And so I was trying to point that out to them, and it was funny, Josh. They were getting very angry at me, like, no, we only go with the evidence. We only go where science leads us. And I kept putting it back in their face and saying, no, you know, you actually believe a lot of things in faith, a lot more things in faith than I do, actually, when you get down to it. In fact, Josh, I like to put it this way. They have to believe in faith that a huge expansion of gas created the collapsing of gas created the different stars. They believe that one of those stars was our stars. They believe the collision of material created planets, and that one of those planets happened to be our planet, and that was exactly the right distance from the sun. They've got to believe that liquid water existed on that planet, and then eventually non-living materials became alive, and that living organism was able to replicate itself, and it evolved through all of the different animals to become humans. They believe all of that in faith, in spite of the facts, because there is a lack of evidence for all of that. And what do we as Christians believe? We believe that design points to a designer. And I always like to put that back and say, wow, it takes so much faith to believe what you believe, much more than mine.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why, you know, when I'm working on this book, Why They Don't Believe, you have to address this idea that people hold on to the science. They're like, well, science has shown, science has proven, or science doesn't show us God, or whatever. And they use this as some sort of reason or excuse, when in reality, if they were true skeptics in any other area of life, that wouldn't hold any water. But Pat, stay where you're at. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're talking to Pat Roy, the website, GenesisApologetics.com. You can also go to DebunkEvolution.com. Now, Pat, before the break, we were talking about how really this theory of evolution is a belief system because I don't know why, because they want to avoid God. They want to make sure that there is no God. And either it's because they don't want to deal with that reality, or they just can't wrap their mind around it. I don't know. But the point is that there is pushback from the other side. And this idea that you're getting this into the hands, you've already started to experience some of that pushback. What sort of things are you covering in these 12 parts?
Well, again, we went right to the textbooks that are being used in public schools, and we identified the evolutionary teaching there, and we basically went through and debunked those. We've produced a series of videos. Matter of fact, you can see the videos for free if you go to DebunkEvolution.com. Also, the commercial I just talked about is also on debunkevolution.com. It's worth the watch. It's 3 minutes. It's a lot of fun. The episodes themselves are about 8 minutes long to 12 minutes long. And again, basically what we did was we took these teachings in the evolutionary textbooks, and we've got 2 young people that are hosting, and they're actually holding up the very textbooks that are being used in schools, turning to the actual charts that are being used, and pointing to the different illustrations and discussing those and debunking them. So we hope it's going to be a good tool for high school students.
You know, I'm so encouraged at some of the efforts that are happening right now. I just talked to a guy who did the same thing with public schools history textbooks. And him and a bunch of other scholars, a bunch of real researchers, went through what our kids are being taught in their history textbooks and found 1,500 errors just in the history textbooks. So
wow,
I absolutely
incredible.
love the idea of what you guys are doing. So I mean, so let me ask you this: since you've been in this, you said you've been in this kind of vein for what, 25 years?
Yes, sir.
So in those 25 years, we have seen a massive shift in the people who believe in evolution and Big Bang and that whole thing. It started out, there was obviously no evidence of God, so don't believe in anything like that. As evidence continued to rack up, it turned into, okay, well, obviously there's a design here. I mean, even Dawkins, for goodness sakes, is now admitting a design. But they're not admitting a divine designer. They're saying, well, it's either aliens or a hologram or a computer program or whatever. But this is obviously not chance. Why do you think they just don't want to let go?
Hey, can I answer from Scripture?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, here we go. Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness and ungodliness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Whoa, check that out, Josh. They suppress the truth. Wow, in their heart of hearts, do they know the truth and they're suppressing it? When they look at the genome, when they look at the amazing design of the body, when they look at everything around us, do they know the truth and they're suppressing it? Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly being understood by the things that are made. Wow, the things that are made clearly show about God, right? Even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Wow. So in their heart of hearts, they know the truth, they suppress the truth, and then they deny God. And then it goes on, verse 21, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful. They became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and the birds, and the four-footed animals, and the creeping things. Therefore God gave them up to uncleanliness, and the lust of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves, to exchange the truth of God for the lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Wow, they worship the creation instead of the Creator. Boy, do we see that happening in America right now. Verse 26, okay. For this reason God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was false. And then they go on and they commit all kinds of sinful acts. Isn't that amazing? Because, Josh, a lot of times I go, wow, is this creation thing really that important, or is it just a passion of mine? But then I look at Romans chapter 1, and I look at the progression there. They know the truth. They deny the truth. They begin to worship the creation instead of the Creator, and then they start to commit this incredible list of sin that goes on through chapter 1, and I say, wow, that's really what's going on in our world right now, right, is exactly that.
Oh, exactly. And there was a time where science could just say, well, you know, this is just a bunch of dumb caveman stories, you know, planets out in space, you silly Christians, but that's what the Bible says. And, you know, it kind of, to use the expression, it kind of evolved. And now the more scientific we get, the more it just is evidence of a design. Like, for example, the probability of a functional sequencing amino acid string is 0.0000. There's 63 zeros before you get to the 1. That means the probability of that is more than all the grains of sand on the entire planet.
Right, exactly. That's it. And so, listen, every day they are faced with the overwhelming evidence of design, right? Because every square inch of this universe, every little microscopic part of it points back to a designer, right? I mean, they are surrounded with it, and yet they've got to suppress the truth, and they've got to deny the creator, right? I mean, that's exactly what it's saying in Romans chapter 1. And I run into scientists all the time that work with the human genome or work in biology or something like that, and they talk about all this fantastic design, and then at the end they credit that to random chance, and you just think to yourself, whoa, how did you get there?
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to somebody about how biology is now essentially everybody who studies biology is on board with there's a design, but then at the end, like you said, they end with design by random chance, and everybody have a great weekend, we're done. And they spend 2 days talking about how there's so much design and architecture and how it cannot be chance. It's crazy. But, I mean, okay, so...
Right, what I always say is that a lot of times I think evolutionists live as functional creationists on a daily basis, but then they philosophize about evolution, right? So you watch the documentary, and it's the cheetah has been designed to run fast, and you go, wait, you can't say that as an evolutionist. You can't say the cheetah was designed to run fast. You need to say, isn't it amazing that natural processes and random chance allowed the cheetah to run faster, right? But see, functionally, every day in the world, they see the design. They see that things are designed to work a certain way, and to live in this world, you have to confess that. But then when they philosophize, they get to the point of saying, well, all that happened through an evolutionary process, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so let's talk about some topics then. I mean, because people are going to say, well, carbon dating shows X, Y, Z. But, I mean, isn't that kind of debunked anyway? I mean, more and more museums aren't even relying on carbon dating.
Well, I think you're talking about the radiometric dating when it comes to dating rocks. And yes, dating rocks is probably one of the biggest issues. People believe that when a lab dates a rock, that it's absolute gospel. But, Josh, there is example after example where we see that it just does not work. For instance, Mount St. Helens. As a matter of fact, just a couple of days ago was the 36th anniversary of Mount St. Helens. And one of my friends, a geologist by the name of Dr. Steve Austin, actually pulled a rock out of the dome. That rock was 10 years old. He sent it to a lab to be dated, and it came back being hundreds of thousands of years old. However, the rock at the time was only 10 years old. We've got example after example. I've got another friend who did a similar thing where he pulled a rock out of a volcano called Nova Rupta that erupted about 100 years ago.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
All right, Pat. So we interrupted you, unfortunately, with a commercial break right in the middle of a story you were going to tell us about Vesuvius. Can you pick up where you left off, please, sir?
Mistake of just talking right through into the commercial break. I'm sorry about that. I hate when people did that, and now I did it myself.
No problem, no problem. We'll just blame it on the board operator who didn't turn up the music.
There you go. Somebody else's fault, I'm sure. We've got a great video about this, by the way. If you go to the debunkevolution.com, one of the episodes is specifically about radiometric dating, and I don't know where I left off at or where we cut in, but basically Dr. Steve Austin of the Institute for Creation Research took a rock from Mount St. Helens, the lava dome there. When the rock was 10 years old, it was dated as being hundreds of thousands of years. I've got another friend, Dr. David Shorman, who pulled a sample from Nova Rupta, which was a volcano 100 years ago in Alaska. Likewise, that rock was 100 years at the time that he grabbed it. That dated out to be hundreds of thousands of years as well. And so, listen, we've shown that radioisotope dating does not work. And again, if you want to see the video on that and the whys, you can go to debunkevolution.com. So, yeah, we've shown that it doesn't work. I was reading in one of the textbooks that we use out here in California, and it actually made the statement that radioisotope dating, radiometric dating is important because if the Earth is not millions of years old, it does not give enough time for evolution to happen. And it even confesses, hey, listen, if rocks had dated to be young, it would destroy the theory of evolution. That's basically what they say. I'm paraphrasing. And so, that's why this issue is so key, is that it's true. If they're wrong about their radioisotope dating, their radiometric dating, then there is not enough time for evolution, and their theory is dead.
Well, not only that, the more complexity we find in design, the over 100,000 little neurons that leave the front of your eye and connect with the 100,000 that leave from the back of your eye, the more we learn about the details with better microscope and better observation, the more time we actually need. It took millions of years, and then we got electronic microscopes, and then, it took billions of years, because they realized, hey, wait a second, we ran out of time here.
Right, exactly. Now, the interesting thing is they apply time as if it's some magical god that makes everything all right. In other words, if you've got major amounts of time, maybe evolution can do even more in that time. Well, actually it's the reverse of that, because we've learned that things are actually devolving. Things are getting worse off. We've got genetic deterioration that's going on. The genome is getting worse off because of mutation. Mutations are bad. They're destroying the genome. So actually more time is even more damaging to the idea of evolution. So it's kind of ironic that time is actually their enemy, but they think it's their best friend.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings us into fossils, too. I mean, fossils back in the 60s were like the holy grail of, evolution. Now it's kind of the opposite there, too, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And fossils are a great evidence of the worldwide flood. We talk about the worldwide flood. A lot of times for kids, we present that as this cute little fairy tale that took place in Sunday school, right? But what we actually see, Josh, is we see these massive fossil graveyards where you've got dinosaurs, mammals, lungfish, salamanders, birds that were all picked up. And think about the different environments that all those live in, right? We've got creatures from the air, we've got creatures on land, we've got creatures from the sea, all jumbled together, laid down very rapidly in these layers and instantly fossilized. I mean, when we look around at all the different fossil beds that we see, they're great evidence of a huge catastrophic inundation of water that took place. So, yeah, fossils have become the best friend of creationists.
So what else? I mean, what haven't I picked up that you wanted to bring up?
Well, Josh, I think I would like to say how important it is for Christian parents to really train their students with this. Again, we started off by talking about how most students go to secular school, and then by college, a lot of them are denying their faith. And I just want to point out, it's important for you to be engaged with your kids. Make sure that you're talking to them about what they're learning. And again, I would just say, make sure that they have an understanding of the facts. Go to Debunk Evolution, watch the videos with them. You can download the book for free. You can download the study guide for free and use that as a way to train them. Josh, I went out to the college campus here, the local college campus, because I wanted to see if that statistic was true, that most students would reject their faith. And I went out to the college campus with a microphone and a camera, and I must have talked to probably about 100 students over a couple of days. And I just interviewed them, and I asked them questions like, did you come from a Christian home? A lot of students said yes to that. And then I'd follow up with questions like, did you go to youth group? Did you go to Sunday school? And a lot of them said yes. And then I asked them, are you currently a Christian? Would you call yourself a Christian? And many of them said, no, I'm no longer a Christian. And I went, wow, that's amazing. I said, what caused you to deny your faith? And a lot of them said, in biology class, I learned that evolution was true. And then I'd follow up with this question. I'd go, give me your best evidence. What was the thing in biology class that absolutely convinced you that it was time to reject your faith? And they would say, no, I don't know if I can give you any specifics on that, but I just know that evolution's true and that the Bible isn't really accurate. And I said, wow, you just rejected your faith, and you cannot give me a specific reason on why you did that. And then the next question I would usually ask them is I'd turn off the camera, and we'd say, hey, if I could give you some evidence right now, would you be interested? Here's what I heard from all the students. Yeah, we're totally interested. So usually I'd sit there and talk with them on the campus for about 10 or 15 minutes. One guy I got to talk to for about 45 minutes and just show the evidence. And at the end of it, the guy said, man, maybe I need to go back and recheck this out again. So listen, I think this is hugely important. If you're a parent who's got a kid in public school, they are going to teach them evolution. Are you equipped to do that? Boy, you really need to be talking to them about that. Or maybe you're homeschoolers. Thing I've learned about homeschoolers, a lot of them are raised with all the creation evidence, but a lot of times they don't know how to debunk evolution. So, again, Josh, I would just encourage people to go check out debunkevolution.com.
Hey, Pat, do you feel up to take a call?
Sure.
All right, let's go to Paul in New Jersey. Paul, you're on with Pat. What's on your mind?
Yeah, gentlemen. Part of the reason I think people reject, Christianity is the Bible itself. I mean, they send their so-called Savior down, and yet he can't be direct or explain how life works. He speaks in parables, non-direct logic. And so it has to do with the fact that there is no obvious God in this plane of existence, and man has to stumble around on his own trying to figure it out, okay? And so our scientists go out there, and one of the things is, don't forget, you two fellas, you're basing all your thinking on your use of logic, so that's your science. So to me, this is a battle of the sciences. And so we're just trying to stumble around and figure out the truth, and scientists dig up bones, and they find dinosaurs, and they find them in many different layers of strata. And so the scientists have done a great job of doing that, of finding out, about the bones and skeletons and the, ancient history of these dinosaurs. And as I've argued, the part of the problem is, and by the way, you haven't really brought up the issue concerning dinosaurs, is that we have this physical evidence, and man on his own is just trying to figure it out. So I wouldn't be, you seem awfully hostile towards the evolutionists. And
right, well, Paul, you bring up a great point, is that the evolutionists are not the enemies, right? And you're right. All of us as humans, we're striving to figure out how this whole world works, right? I mean, we are learning more, and we're out investigating. So listen,
exactly.
Paul, I always like to put it this way, right, is that a lot of times the evolutionists say, well, we've got proof that evolution is absolute, and then the creation, but it's like a scene of a crime, right? It's like a car accident. In other words, I can't go to a laboratory and prove to you that God exists using a laboratory. And likewise, an evolutionist can't prove to me that there are millions and millions of years ago that there was this giant expansion of the universe and it created all the life that we have on the planet, right? We can't do that in a laboratory. So instead, it's like an investigation, right? We have to go and all collect our evidence, and we have to try and recreate the crime scene again, right? And see which idea best fits with the evidence. As far as dinosaurs go...
Both of you hold on a second, because we're up against a break, but I'll keep you both. That's a great point, though, so stay where you're at, folks. We'll be back right after this. If you're just joining us, we're talking about evolution and creation, and we took a caller out in New Jersey named Paul, who was talking to our guest named Pat. Pat's website, debunkevolution.com. Now, Pat, we kind of hit the break, and you were explaining how we're kind of looking at a car accident, so if you could pick up where you left off, please. Oh, we lost Pat. Man, that's a bummer. All right, so when that happened, we lost Pat. So, Paul, it's you and I. So here's the deal. Do we still have Paul?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. So, Paul, you're right in the fact that we're all trying to figure out where we're from, how we got here, what happened. But there's this interesting aspect in science where science is now purposely trying to reject their own conclusions. And that's where we kind of slip into crazy trainville. When you have these atheist scientists or agnostic, well, not even agnostic, because they're trying to skirt that issue. And they're saying, yep, there is a design here. Yep, this is not a chance. Yep, we think maybe it's even an alien life form, or we're in a hologram, or we're in a computer program. And if, however, you can believe 100 different design theories, but you cannot believe that there's a God, because if you're a God, then you're the nut. But you can believe we're in the hologram of a 16-year-old girl's laptop, which is what one of the scientists recently came out and said. So I think that's the problem that a lot of people are having. And somehow, if we can bring Pat back into this too, Pat, are you with
here?
us? All right.
I am, but I didn't hear any of the last few minutes of conversation there. I was in the cyber zone, lost in internet cyberspace.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We were just talking about how there's this concept, this idea, that how we have all these scientists who are saying it's some design, whether it's a hologram, a computer program, alien life. One scientist recently came out and said that, who knows, we might be all living in some 16-year-old girl's laptop in the form of a big sim program. They're coming up with hundreds of ideas. It's becoming more and more popular. Isn't that interesting? It is, but they won't let us believe in a God. Like, you can believe in any of these 100 crazy ideas, but if you believe in a God, then you're nuts.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting, right? Because they're faced with the design that they see all around them, and they see the obvious fingerprint of God, and yet, just like we read in Romans, right, they've got to suppress the truth, right? And so they've got to explain it any other way they can. So that's what leads Dawkins to talk about the fact that life started from aliens possibly, right? And like you said, the simulation idea is really becoming popular right now, and wow, it's really interesting the ideas that they're forced into believing so they can continue to suppress the truth that there is a God, a creator who made it all.
Or the newest one that's really starting to take root is that there's hundreds of trillions of multiverses, some where stones never become creatures and others where amino acids turn into purple things. Like, they have to explain it away, so they're literally just coming up with stuff.
Right, exactly. And so I think for us as Christians, it becomes very important, right, that we're researching, that we're equipping ourselves, that we're ready to give an answer, right? Because for me, I look at the world and I go, wow, it seems like things are getting a little crazy here, and there's more and more just ideas that to me are just so strange, and we as Christians have got to have an answer for those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the resources, because like you said, you have those 12 free videos up online right now. Parents who are listening to this show, take your kids to it. What else can they find? How do they navigate through the resources that you guys have?
Right, okay, so let me give you just a very clear plan that they can use. If you go to debunkevolution.com, if you want to, you can just watch the 12 videos. Listen, if a student just watches those 12 videos, I think they'll come away with a great foundation that they can use when they're in school. If you want to go a little deeper with it, there's a student guide that you can download for free, and you can go through and actually answer questions about the videos. It goes a little more in depth. And then if you really want to go for the gold, you can also download the Debunk Evolution book, and it goes into major depth on all of the issues. And then one last thing that's helpful for both homeschoolers and public school students, we've also got an online class that you can take. The class is absolutely free, so everything that we've got is free. But if you want to do the online class, again, what that is it's the 12 videos, and then it goes through and asks you questions, and there's graded quizzes you can take. And to get to the online class, it's academy.genesisapologetics.com. And then the biggest thing that we're asking from people is that we have printed up 120,000 wristbands that say debunkevolution.com. And we're trying to...
I actually have one on right now, Pat. I'm showing the viewers on YouTube. It's on my wrist right now.
All right, Josh. You know what's so fun is when we first got the wristbands, I wasn't sure how those were going to go. And, I don't usually use wristbands myself, but I said, man, I'm going to be a hypocrite unless I start wearing these. What's been fun is I wear one all the time now, and I can't tell you how many times at the hardware store or at the sandwich shop or something, I've been able to share my faith as a direct result of that wristband. And then the cool thing is, once I'm done talking to somebody, I actually take the wristband off and I hand it to them, and instead of not remembering the web address or losing a piece of paper I give them or whatever, they actually take the wristband from my wrist and put it onto their wrist. And it's really a cool tool. So listen, if there's a person out there who would like a wristband, or if you're a church who wants to give them out to your students, or you're somebody who can give out those wristbands, we'll send you as many wristbands as you would like, and it doesn't cost anything. We'll pay the shipping and everything. So you can just go to debunkevolution.com, and you can get our email address and just send us an email and say, hey, I want X number of wristbands, and we'll send them out to you at no cost.
You know, folks, I mean, I just want to bring something up, because people all the time say, oh, you know, talk radio, you're always trying to sell something, sell something, sell something. He's offered you 5 different things. All of them are for free. So just go to the website, and even if you're like, oh, I don't know about this, do I really believe? Go there and check it out. It's absolutely free. And then you can say, oh, well, you know, I still don't believe, but at least I took him up on his offer. So, Pat, what's the final word? What are you hoping to do with this organization? What's the goal?
Well, I think Dr. Dan Biddle and myself, we both, and also we've also got Dave Bisbee, who's the vice president. We've also got Caleb Lepore, who's a young man who goes out and speaks for us. Listen, I think all of us are grieved at knowing that today, at many places around the nation, there's probably a student whose faith is being challenged, and they're considering giving it all up. In fact, today there will be several students who decide that the Bible is no longer true. And so really our goal is just to equip these students and try and help them to understand that they can trust God's Word. And Josh, I think I'm learning more and more the power of a question. I'm realizing that in the classroom, if a student can just ask questions, that a lot of times if they can just raise a question, the rest of the class sees that maybe the professor doesn't know everything and does not have God-like powers. And so we're just encouraging students maybe to even just ask questions in class. And I've had students come to me all the time and say, Pat, I can't talk about my faith in the classroom because I don't know the case well enough. Well, I think I'm beginning to realize all they need to do is ask questions. Simple questions. How did non-living materials become alive? How did gas clouds, instead of dissipating, how did they collapse and become stars? I think just asking a question helps the other students to realize, wow, maybe the professor doesn't have all of the answers. And so that's really our goal,
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a huge point. Pat, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, the website, genesisapologetics.com, or as the wristband says, debunkevolution.com. We'll be back right after this.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.